It is my privilege today to get to introduce Dr. Gustavo Perez. He will have a conversation with Dr. Molly Lopez, our director, kind of ending our conference on how you move forward. It's my understanding that he will introduce himself, but I just wanted to take a minute to acknowledge that it's a personal honor of mine to introduce him today, as I actually trained with him during graduate school, and this was my first introduction to the field. And when we were planning this conference to focus on human connection, I immediately thought of Dr. Perez. He models for others how this work is truly relational and can center kindness in all of his interactions. His approach to every relationship, whether that's with trainees, family members, young people, or other team members, truly models compassion and humility. And I think his approach spreads throughout his program and creates a humanistic and recovery-oriented environment. So I am truly honored that today he's going to share some of how he's able to build this environment in the presentation and discussion with Dr. Molly Lopez beyond the clinic, the healing power of kindness and community. And with that, I will turn it over to Molly and Gustavo to close our conference.
Thank you, Sam. Thanks so much. And thank you, Gustavo, for being here today. I don't think there's anything better than having this opportunity to reflect a little bit on what we've talked about over the past 2 days and learn a little bit about what you do. So without any further ado, perhaps you can tell us a little bit about yourself, about your program, and how you got involved in this work.
Absolutely. But first, Molly, let me say thank you to all of you who are here today. We made it through 2 very wonderful days of learning about the experience of living with psychosis and supporting each other. So welcome to all of you, wherever you are. A little bit about myself. I am a psychologist in Tucson, Arizona. I've been practicing here for about 20 years now. And it was about 8 years ago when I was working in the juvenile detention center that I got an email in the middle of a morning. And it was the prior director from Epicenter who said, "What about Epicenter?" Question mark. And I came to visit the program and I chatted with her. And at the time, I didn't know a lot about psychosis, to be honest. I didn't have a lot of training in graduate school. I had only worked with a few patients experiencing psychosis. So I felt insecure and unsure if this was a place for me. But I decided to give it a try. And there were 2 things that inspired me. One, the opportunity to work with young people long-term. Our program is 5 years long. And number 2, the opportunity to also work with families, to be involved with the very important people in these young people's lives. And 8 years ago, I came and I'm still here, and I have the honor of working with a very, very outstanding team. We're a comprehensive program, outpatient. We offer psychiatry, psychology, peer support, case management, and other services. We, Epicenter Early Psychosis Intervention Center, we were the number 8 program in the country. Started in 2010, and for many years, we were the only program in the state of Arizona, a state with almost 8 million people, the only program that offered this service, which speaks to the need for the work that all of us do. And that's who we are.
That's amazing. That's wonderful. I know you've been following along and paying attention to some of the conversations that have been happening in our chat, and you know what a wonderful audience we've had here over the past 2 days. What might be some of the lessons that you've learned over the past 8 years about working with young people with psychosis that you might share with our audience?
I have learned a lot. Let me pick a few things. One, listening to the stories that our young people share with us and their families as well, I have learned that psychosis is a difficult journey. It's a condition or a situation that has a lot of uncertainty. It comes with some experience of loss. I recently met a young guy who was doing well in school, had done a first year of college, and he had to come back because of his symptoms and had to accept or adjust to this new reality. I'm back at home. I'm back in Tucson. This is not a plan that I had. And now I had to figure out what's next. And it was also difficult for the parents because they were very en route to support their kid to go to college. And now he's back home and they are not sure what's going on. And they've been to different places and they get different diagnoses or different types of feedback from people. So it can be confusing. At the same time, it can also be a place of isolation. I have one of the first conversations I had with one of our young members was very important for me because he showed me in that first month that I was here, how to think about this differently. He said to me, you know, Dr. Perez, I can deal with the voices. I'm okay listening to these voices and these unusual experiences in my brain. What's very hard for me is to feel so lonely, to feel that I don't belong, to feel that I don't really have a way to make friends or connect with friends. And that has stayed with me. And it echoes conversations that we have in our parent group where some of the parents say, I don't know anybody else who's going through the same thing that I'm going through. So it's an experience that's difficult, uncertain, there's grieving, there is isolation, but also there is a lot of resilience and a lot of strength. And that is probably the number one thing that I have learned. Every year, we have members who complete 5 years in our program. That's 5 years of intense services. That's a lot of hours of families and young people showing up. And for that, I have nothing but total admiration.
Yeah, absolutely. You talked about the experience that both your members as well as your families experience around isolation. How do you help as a program? How do you help them overcome that? Get connected.
Yes, Molly. So we have done several things. In 2000, about 2 years ago after the pandemic, we started, we were very intentional to invite people to our program with lived experience and share their stories. And that's how we met Lori Taylor, person in our community. And Sam, could you bring up the slide for Lori, please? And I'm sharing the story of Lori with her permission. So Lori Taylor is a person who has been living with schizophrenia for the past 20 years. And she is someone who has been very active and purposeful in sharing her story. And I have the privilege of interviewing her for our newsletter, which is a way how we want to stay connected with members and beyond our members. And you will receive a link in the resource page if you would like to read the story in our newsletter. I hope it is worth it. So we did an interview with Lori, and then Lori, I'm sorry, and then she later came to speak to our members and families during an open house event that we have at the end of every year. And when I was interviewing her, she spoke about the loss and the difficulty of learning to live with her challenges. And this is a quote from her interview that I'm going to read. She said, I had a period 10 years ago when a doctor suggested I go off my medication. Within a year, I lost everything. I lost my job. I went through a divorce. I lost my home to foreclosure. I ended up homeless and in jail. Currently, Lori is the program manager for Café 54, a restaurant in downtown Tucson that serves a very good lunch. I'm a witness to that. But more importantly, it is a program that helps young people with mental illness to train to get back into the job force, to precisely break away from the isolation and connect with others. So she's done two things, and she's been very generous with her story. She has talked about her journey, but then she has put all that experience and wisdom into this project, which is part of an organization in town. And when she came to us, when she came and spoke to our community, to our members, our families, what was very clear and important for us is that she was presenting a different story, a story of hope and possibility, which is very different from what many of our members have heard before. One of the things that I have very present in my mind right now is Amy Pierce's presentation yesterday about how she was told, this is gonna be your life. Schizophrenia means there's not a lot you can do. And I have had patients telling me that same thing. I have a young man who actually is doing really, really well as far as working and being in school, who was told at his first hospitalization, this is gonna be your life. There's not a lot you're gonna be able to do. So for Lori to come to our community, to our clinic and talk about her story, it is very powerful because they were expanding the community, right? It's not just about us, but it's about people living with schizophrenia and living well. And I like how Ron talked earlier during his presentation, just before this one, about choosing to tell the stories we need versus use being okay with the stories that we're being told. And this is one way how we are trying to expand our community by inviting people to share their lived experiences. We have other experiences in our website. So again, I invite you all to visit our website and read about this really extraordinary. Thank you, Sam, for this time.
Awesome. And I know our team was putting some of those links into the chat so people can look a little further into Lori's story. That's awesome. I love too that idea of how do we present stories that show opportunity and hope, and try not to have those stories that sometimes get shared that that can help us feel like we are in one box, one journey, when really there's many, many journeys that we're all on. One of the things that I'm interested in knowing a little bit more is you've sort of talked about how you all are trying to build community within your program. Can you tell me a little bit more about why you feel like that's important? What does that do for individuals?
So there was a question before during the activity before the presentation, define community. And that's something that I've been thinking a lot and thinking with our team. We want to be more than a clinic, we want to be a place of community. And for us, what that means is that you are a place to belong, a place where you can be who you are, where you don't have to be afraid of being judged, where you don't have to be afraid of being misunderstood. And also a place where all of us are not doing things perfect, right? We make mistakes and we show compassion to each other, going to Dr. Neff's presentation at the beginning of the conference. And I have, if I can share one story, it's more than a story, it's an experience. About a year ago, we got funding for a peer support specialist. And we have several people applying for the program. And one of the person who applied was one of our patients. His name is Andrew, and actually he is participating in the conference today. And when Andrew applied, we got a little bit nervous. It was like, uh-oh, what are we gonna do? And some of the questions that we had as a team was, is he gonna be able to transition from being a patient or a member to being a person who now is providing services to his peers, and this is going to be overwhelming to him. And we were worried about him. And then we realized that we were asking the wrong questions. The most important question that we needed to ask was, is he the best person for the job? Is he qualified to do a good job? And he was. By the time he applied to this position, he had been working as in a crisis response call center for 2 years, which is a very stressful job. And even within our program, he had become a natural leader. So it was a place for us to recognize our own bias. So we were still thinking of him in one box, and we were not expanding our own boxes. So he is a member of our community. He's not just a patient, or he's not a patient. He's someone in our community who's applying for a job that we have as an opening. And let me tell you, it's one of the best decisions we have made at every center. Probably the best one. Because with Andrew now as a team, we've done two things. One, we have the ability to say to our members, we know exactly what you are going through. Well, I don't. Gustavo Perez doesn't know what it means to hear voices or to go through a hospitalization. But I have somebody here in the program who knows. And he has been really good at connecting with members in new ways and expanding our own sense of possibility. And the second thing that has happened with Andrew in our team is that we are learning a lot. We were lacking that experience. We were lacking that opportunity to really have a better, deeper, more humane understanding of what it means to cope with situations like this, symptoms like this. So that's something that this has been very, I would say, uplifting and energizing for me during the last 2 days to hear from so many peer supports and other people with lived experience who are challenging us to think better and differently about what it means to support them in their journey.
Yeah, and how better can we learn? We've talked a lot over these past 2 days about being open to learning, about never stopping our learning. Learning is leadership, and it sounds like your team was really embracing learning, which is amazing.
Yes, the more I know, the less I know.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So I know you titled your presentation Beyond the Clinic. Can you tell us what you meant by that?
Yes, absolutely. So, as I said, when I came here, we were, I had limited experience, and I was also, we are part of a School of Medicine program. So we follow a very traditional model of psychotherapy, psychiatry, and so on. So we learned that we needed to expand our program both within our clinic and beyond the clinic. So let me tell you a little bit first about how we're expanding our program within the clinic. One of the things that we have done and it's just very intentional. That's something that I also want to talk about, that you have to make a decision to really do things differently and spend time thinking together and asking and listening about how this can be done. And one of the things that we do as part of having people with lived experiences is to invite parents to share their experiences. And actually, one thing that I did, I called Andrew's parents after he was hired, and I asked them to come back to the clinic, and I also interviewed them, and they also presented to other parents. And I have a slide about that, Sammy, you can bring it up. So I have Mona and Lou Moore, and this is Andrew with his parents. It's a picture from last year. It's a recent picture. This is how they currently look. And it was very important for us to go beyond our traditional spaces of conversation and invite the parents, because we also realize, as I said at the beginning, that parents often don't get to hear from other parents how it is, other family members, it can be a spouse, it can be a sibling, what it is like to them to navigate, to journey, to walk together with their loved ones. And this is a quote from Andrew's mother about what a placenta had meant to them. Before Epicenter, we had to be his therapist. We had to be his counselor. We had to figure out what was going on. And then all of a sudden, he didn't have to come to us. He could call or go in, talk about us to someone else. It was good for him to have a support group that did not include us, that would help him find himself without his parents saying, this is what we see. He needed to see who he was without us interfering anymore. That is what Epicenter brings the student, to help them learn who they are. And as we know, adolescence and early 20s is a time of developing identity. And when you are dealing with mental illness or with psychosis, there's a lot of negative messages about that identity. And the family also has those messages. Maybe it was a fault, maybe we didn't do enough. So by sharing these experiences, we're expanding the notion of what it means to be journeying together. And later, Mona called me and said, actually, she wrote me and she said, sharing the story with you was very good because our parents could learn from us. But also it was very good for us because it gave us a chance to think a lot. Wow, this is what we have done. And we have done a lot. So they started to share the story with their friends and their family members. And they also started to get some feedback from their extended family members and friends who said, we had no clue. We had no idea that this is what all of you had achieved together. So you know how in therapy we say, this is confidential, what we say in this room stays in this room. We want to do the opposite. We want to put these stories everywhere. We want to put them in a newsletter. We want to put them out there for the community to learn from them. Because once again, it is by sharing this story that we truly understand each other and figure new ways to do what we're doing better. Thank you, Sam. Now, the second thing that we are doing, and I can go on forever, so let me pause for a moment to see you have.
No, this is great. And I loved that story and just the connection that I could even just hear in their experience with other families and then moving on to other people in their life as they talked about the experience that they were going through in just reflecting back on their journey as parents. So that's wonderful. I'll let you keep going because you've got this down.
Thank you, Molly. I appreciate your help. One thing that's important to think about is what are the spaces. So what I'm saying, it's important to share the stories, to put them out there, and that's the way how we build community. But we have to dedicate spaces. We have to make sure that we are very intentional, again, about planning ahead. And we're just beginning. Just to let you know, we actually have a postdoc who's going to join us in July, and part of her task is going to be how to even do a better job than we have done so far to connect with people in our community living well with psychosis, with schizophrenia, with other conditions, and how can we bring people together to learn from each other. Now, in 2019, before COVID, I guess this is how we talk now, before COVID, after COVID, we also made a decision to expand our programming, and we started a program that we call Epicenter in the Community. So we started living Epicenter, living our clinic, and going to places that already exist in the community where we could do an activity together. Sam, can I have the next slide, please? So some examples of what we did. So we went to, and these are our flyers. I just have a sample of the things that we have done. We went to Las Vilpitas, which is an urban farm that is run by the Southern Arizona Food Bank Project. And this is basically what we did. Epicenter members, family members, and our team, we got together at the farm, we roll up our sleeves, and we worked together. We helped to move plants from one place to another place. We had a chat with the gardeners about how to grow tomatoes. We looked at the tomatoes, we tasted the tomatoes. So it was a morning where it wasn't about what are your symptoms, are you in crisis, what are your goals? the kind of questions that we therapists tend to maybe ask too much. It was about, hey, how do plants grow? And it was about doing it, which is also a very important thing to mention here, that sometimes we talk too much. I know I do, and we need more doing and less talking. So this was a perfect example of how we got together to do something together. And when we were reflecting on this experience recently, two of our psychologists, Dr. Sanchez and Dr. Garcia, shared how it really felt to be out there when the dynamic of patient-doctor is no longer. We are just a group of people connecting with each other, learning from each other. There's humor, there is getting tired, there is let's take a break. And that may seem small, and at the same time, those small steps are really important because it really helps to bring new layers of interaction and new layers of recognition with each other. We go to museums, we go to we do an epicenter at a park, where we walk to a park nearby. And you have to balance it because we're still a clinic. We have to make sure we provide the services that people expect from us, the core services, but then we have to build something better. And that's the idea. And in building this something better, we also want to hear from our members. And there is a phrase by Father Greg Boyle, who works with CAN members in Los Angeles. And I listened to an interview and he said this phrase, we are walking each other home. That's what we're doing at my organization. We're just walking each other home. And I really like the phrase, and I borrow it and I use it in our own work here, because I like to think that that's what we're doing. At the beginning, when I came to the center, I do the hat of the expert and I say, I'm going to learn about this and then give people the answers that they need. And that's an impossible task. And it's also not the best task. The best task is to be with each other, to learn from our members, to ask, what did you need? To ask, how can I walk? And with our parents as well. And sometimes walking with each other means sitting with each other in silence after something very sad and just being there. No words needed. And sometimes walking with each other means, hey, how can we do what we're doing better? And truly listen and truly be intentional at using that feedback to develop a better program for the people we want to serve. Thank you, Sam.
That's amazing. I know people are commenting about that, about the phrase walking each other home and what that is speaking to them. I also loved that idea of building those layers of experience, because that's how we develop relationships, isn't it? It's not doing things exactly the same in the same way and every time we meet together, but it's having those opportunities to be in a different place, experience a different thing, talk with each other in a different way, and that builds those layers of relationships. I love that. That's amazing.
I agree. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm curious just a little bit more about those opportunities that you all have created in the community. How do you think about who in the community you want to kind of engage with, or where do you want to kind of create those spaces that are going to be meaningful, or going to kind of give your team and the members an opportunity to really engage in a comfortable way within their community?
Yes. So one thing that I want to say first is that this is about all of us, right? The community has a responsibility to support young people. We have a responsibility to provide education, to provide healthcare, and to provide opportunities for social development and engagement, to employment or other activities. So when someone says, I'm dealing with a lot of loneliness, I feel very isolated, a big responsibility for that is there's not a lot of places to belong. Like, you can only go beyond the clinic if there is a beyond. You can only connect with a community. There is a community who's opening the doors. And it's not like opening the doors as a favor. It is your right as a young person to be part of all of this. So we are our initial targets, our initial partners are people in the community who are already doing very important work to support young people. So rather than trying to create something that is going to take a lot of time and money and we won't be able to achieve, the first question that we need to ask ourselves as programs is, what is out there that we have now been using properly? For example, we have a program in Tucson, it's called 𝐂𝐥𝐢𝐬𝐧𝐢𝐜 through the University of Arizona. They offer gym, exercise classes, cooking classes. We don't have any of that. So that's been one of our partners. We're doing very well with it. Now, one thing we have learned is that you're saying to somebody, why don't you go to 𝐂𝐥𝐢𝐬𝐧𝐢𝐜 Wellness? Doesn't mean a person is going to feel supported enough to go to 𝐂𝐥𝐢𝐬𝐧𝐢𝐜 Wellness. But saying to somebody, hey, why do you want to ask us to 𝐂𝐥𝐢𝐬𝐧𝐢𝐜 Wellness with you? Or having a connection with the people at the team so they know exactly where you're coming from a program. There has to be the labor of nurturing relationships. Where I mentioned the food bank, for example, it's a very excellent organization in Tucson because they offer opportunities for learning how to work in a restaurant and nutrition opportunities and access to healthy food at a low cost. But you have to think about how can you get there? How can you identify these resources? So it's two things. It's helping our members to connect with what's already there. And then the second thing is really working on helping them to bridge those gaps. Have to go from epicenter to community food bank. And that requires being very committed to the process. And that's something that we are doing now, but we need to do better. And that's part of what our postdoc is going to be doing with support from the team next year. Now, there's another part of community, which is the larger community, and is the community who's not thinking about this because they are not directly touched by it. However, it's important that we educate them. It's just a matter of time before someone in their lives is going to be experiencing some sort of difficulties with mental health, or some sort of difficulties with other type of adversity. So how can we go to the radio and have an interview in the radio and talk about epicenter and talk about why our young people need support? Go to employers in the community who can offer a job that is low stress, part-time, and at the same time is meaningful. So that's the kind of work that we're starting to do, and we're very intentional about continuing in the business.
Awesome. Thank you, Gustavo. Let me shift this a little bit. Maybe tell us a little bit about how you think about kindness and that sort of experience and how it can be helpful for young people.
Well, I love this question, Molly. It's making me think of how we started the conference talking about compassion, and we are ending talking about kindness. It's a very good book, ends compassion and kindness, and they go together. So why kindness and how kindness? And I'll talk about, let me go back to the beginning, which was in listening to our members and our families, their parents, their siblings. A lot of what they share with us at the beginning, when they first contact a program, is that grief. And with that grief of losing what it used to be, comes blame. I met with several young people, teenagers, young adults, who said, if I had not tried those mushrooms, if I had not tried that substance, I will not be dealing with this a year later. And I see my friends graduating and I'm still stuck. And it was because of a decision I made. And they carry that self-blame and guilt I think of it as a heavy rock. They put in their backpack and it's very hard to move because that rock of, self-blame, the opposite of compassion, keeps them from moving. And it happens to parents as well, as I mentioned at the beginning. Maybe it was my fault. Maybe I didn't do enough. And I have to also recognize it within us, or within our team. I myself, I have had many days when I'm here at the clinic working as hard as I can and doing the best that I can do. And on my way home, it happened to me recently. I actually was riding my bike that day. I had had a very long day because we had groups in the afternoon. And as I'm riding back home, I'm thinking about everything I didn't do. I didn't do enough. I didn't call the people I needed to call. I did not contact the people I wanted to contact. I had no space in my mind to recognize the good work that we had done that day. So it impacts all of us, this tendency to be hard on ourselves. So with that in mind, we started a project last fall. It's called Kindness is Good Medicine, which is a collaboration with a center at the University of Arizona. So can I have that slide, please? So this is there's a researcher at the university. Her name is Dr. 𝐁𝐞𝐲𝐧𝐝. She's the person in white in the middle of the picture. Everybody else in the picture is from the team. And she works with the Norton School of Human Ecology, and her research is precisely about how to bring kindness from an idea, from an abstract idea to an actual practice. And she comes to this from her own experience of grief after losing a 3-year-old son suddenly. He was fine one day. He was gone, sadly, a few days later. And she says how in those very difficult, dark moments of her life, it was the kindness of others that kept her going from one day to the next, the kindness of strangers. And then she took her personal experience and brought it to her professional career. And 20 years later, she has this institute. So we invited her to partner with us. And last year, she came to talk first to our team about the scientific proof of why intentional kindness practices are good for our mental health and our physical health. And then she came as a guest speaker to one of our open houses. This is a picture at the end of our open house. We just don't have members and families because of confidentiality in the picture. But she was talking to our families about her own journey, again, speaking from experience, but also about ways to make this, kind of giving legs and arms and muscle. How do we do this? So she's coming back to work with us in the fall, and we're going to do two things. We are going to continue learning about it together as a team. How can we extend kindness and compassion to each other, to ourselves, to each other, and also to bring that practice into our programs with our members. And then Dr. Maria is going to speak to our members as well. We're going to do some activities together. And what we want to add this time is we want to make it a group project. So rather than saying, go on your own and practice kindness, see you next week, we want to really help each other to figure out how can we do this? How can this be translated into lived experiences? Thank you, Sam. And one of the things that I'm very aware about it when I talk about it, Molly, and is that it's kind of an easy word to say, let's be kind to each other, extend compassion to ourselves, but it can be a very hard thing to do. I'm thinking of a poem by Naomi Shihab, who has a poem about kindness, and there is a phrase that I like very much, and the phrase says, before you know kindness as the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest. So we often arrive to this need to live with more compassion after suffering. And it takes courage, and it's not always easy. If I'm someone who has experienced trauma in my body, it's hard for me to extend compassion to my body. It may feel boring, even scary to think about how I'm feeling in my body. If I'm someone who lives with voices who are very negative, who tell me I'm worthless, I'm a failure, I don't have a future, it may be very hard for me to explain kindness to those voices. I may not even want to acknowledge them. So I think there's more than one way how to do this, and there's a different way for everybody, and that's what we are planning to do in the fall. Learn together about going from the intention of being kind or compassionate to the practice of being kind and compassionate, and then figure out what change does it make in our lives.
That's amazing. Can I come kind of sit in and visit with you all? That's great. You know, one of the things that was just so amazing in that I heard was, and it really does harken back to some of the things we talked about earlier in the conference, is a lot of times as mental health professionals, we think about, we're going to have this learning community over here where we're learning these mental health practices or other professional practices, and you are creating a learning community across your entire program, your team, your members, your families, around how do we do this intentional kindness action, the compassion work together. And that is amazing. I love that. I love that. A really different way of thinking about a learning community. Okay.
Thank you, Molly.
Yeah. I know that probably it's not as easy as we might want it to be. So maybe as we kind of move towards some questions and answers, if you could share with us what some of the barriers are that you faced around building a community and working towards this intentional kindness, maybe how you're thinking about trying to address some of those.
Yes, so some are everyday barriers in terms of the logistics of our work in order to think differently, to reflect, to expand our imaginations and ask, how can we do this better? We need to dedicate time. And because of the dynamics of where we work, sometimes we say there's not enough time. And there is always one more thing that needs to be done. So part of the barrier is to figure out the structure where this can be sustained. That is not just one conversation in February that gets lost and we go back to it in August, and there's nothing in between. So we're learning to be more programmatic about it, and it's a process, and I think we do better a little bit every year, and with everybody, with the help of everybody, I think we can continue to improve that. The second barrier is that there is a lot of stigma in our community. We know that about mental illness and particularly about schizophrenia. I think as a culture we have become a little bit better, not a lot, but a little bit better to talk about depression, anxiety, even PTSD is more part of our everyday conversation. It's not so much of a taboo or stigma. And nobody's talking about schizophrenia. Nobody's talking about the experience of psychosis. And that is something that it's a lot of work that needs to be done. And I go back to the power of sharing stories, because this is how change comes about. The stories touch our humanity, and that's when we are open to new ways of thinking. And then another barrier that we face, number 3, and that's something that we as a program need to have a deeper conversation on what to do about it, is that we have worked very well with the people who find us. You know, the people who knows, oh, I'm gonna Google what's available for my young son who's hearing voices. Oh, at the center, I'm gonna give them a call. But what about the person who doesn't have that cultural capital, who doesn't even have the words to figure out what my son may be going through? So reaching out to people who probably need us the most is a barrier that I see within our system, within the people, that we need to overcome. And that is an urgent call that we need to respond.
Yeah, you are echoing some of the comments that we've been getting and questions that we've been getting. I think people are feeling you when you speak about some of the things that make this challenging. I'm going to ask kind of one of them and just see if you might add a little bit. You started to talk about it some, but one of our participants kind of said that there seems to be some just real systemic barriers to building genuine relationships within our systems, billing pressures, lack of time, things like that. Do you have any ideas about how we can overcome some of those challenges to really center that human connection?
Yes, I have two that I would share that have worked for us. One of them is that we have asked for clarity. We, for those of you who work in a system who has productivity markers and expectations of seeing so many people per week, I don't find any other words to put it by that. We have those. I mean, we need to make sure that we have a full clinic and that we're providing services to our members. And services are defined very, it's like 4 things we can do. Therapy, we can do psychotherapy, case management, and peer support. Epicenter in the park doesn't happen. Going to the milpitas and learn about tomatoes together doesn't happen. So what we first had to do was get clarity. What is our baseline? What are the things that we need to do to check the productivity box? And once we have clarity, then we can program around that. Because we must build beyond that. And it takes a team to do this. That's something that I haven't mentioned yet. That there's a lot of people who make Epicenter happen. So can I have this was going to be my last slide, but I'm gonna share it now. Is that these are the members of our team, and it's a very eclectic team. We have people who are in training and people who have been doing this work for many, many years. And what has helped us is, as I mentioned earlier, to have a dedicated space. We have a space once a week, 1 hour per week. We get together to talk about our clients and our needs, but also about the program, and also about each other, also about us as human beings. And it's within this space that we are now able to ask, okay, what can we do different, better, and how we can do it better. And it takes imagination, and it takes a lot of planning, but it's doable. And I think having very clear indicators, not wanting to do everything at once, but choosing 1 or 2 projects. For example, one thing that we are doing right now with one of our interns is a support group for LGBTQ+ members. And we've been very good or intentional about learning about providing services to LGBTQ+ members trainings. We have a second training coming up. Everybody's going to block the schedule, but we have to make sure that productivity is still met. But again, we have clarity. We know how many clients we have to see, and we know we have this dedicated space to learn together. It's a constant balance. I think the only way it can happen is if you are committed and intentional about it, and you make it part of your team conversation. It should be something what everybody has to do. And again, these are the wonderful people that I get to know. Thank you, Sam.
That's awesome. I appreciate you sharing them a little bit early. It was definitely the right time. I know that many of the participants that we have here today may be in programs, working with programs or participating in programs that are in more rural areas. I'm wondering if you have any ideas about how we can create community in some of our more rural areas.
Yes, so 2 things. One is going back to the natural spaces of community. What's already there? And it can be family, it can be in the library, it can be a church, it can be neighbors. And it's amazing what happens once you start to share your story. How many other people in the room will say, me too, I do have somebody who's struggling. Struggle is not foreign to us as humans. It's part of life. So we just have learned to be very secretive about it. Like everybody's fine. That's part of an ethos that has been not very helpful to us. And am I having the courage to share this story if the person feels safe and supported? That may be a very important step because it opens opportunity for others to share stories. The second thing will be resources via telehealth. And there is a lot of resources that are available that people can now access and reaching out to centers like many of the ones that we're working with to figure out how can these centers support them. We traveled last year to the border precisely to do that, and then just introduce ourselves. We're about 70 miles north of the Mexico-US border. And I would say we're here. You know, if you need our support, give us a call. And that's one way how we can have like a greater outreach.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, here's another question from our participants. I love the way that you model kindness. And they ask, how do you teach kindness and genuine connection to your trainees?
Yeah, I wish they were here to respond to that. So let me tell you a couple of things that we do. One of it is that we don't hide vulnerability. So when we are as a team, we ask that question. In fact, lately, our meetings have started with that question. What is that experience of kindness that you have had this week? Kindness to yourself, kindness to others, or what kindness from others you have received. And I'm very aware that that's not a question that everybody's comfortable with it, and everybody, especially trainees from graduate school, the kind of questions I get is like, what's the statistical power of your dissertation findings, right? Like, what do you mean kindness this week? What are you talking about? But then it has become a more natural conversation for us. And it's important that we, the trainers, you know, people who are the core team, that we talk about it, that we talk about feeling overwhelmed. One of our psychiatrists shared lately that, you know, he was dealing with things, personal and professionally, and he took a week off and he went to the mountains and he spent some time in solitude. And I think for the psychiatrists in training who were there, that was impactful. Huh? That's something I can do. So making it part of a conversation, but also providing a guide of how this can be done, and making it a value in the program. So we're very explicit at saying it's okay to live a balanced life. Don't work on the weekends. You know, if you didn't finish this project, that's okay. That is next week. You can come back and finish this project. And hear that from the supervisor, I hope. Again, I wish they were here to answer the question, but I hope it has a positive effect. It's kind of having permission to practice compassion.
I love that. Starting from really in training, but how do you practice that self-compassion for yourself and compassion for others? That's amazing. Well, I wanna thank you first, but I also want to give you an opportunity if there's anything else from our kind of reflections from the 2 days that you want to share as we move to our next step. I want to kind of open up that opportunity if I didn't ask something that you would like to kind of share with folks.
I think what has been most impactful for me, Molly, once again, is to be able to listen from people's lived experiences. And I think we're really lacking that as quote unquote field of mental health providers. We have lived in our expert hat, expert room for too long. We have learned that it's not okay to say, I don't know. And yet sometimes we don't. And it's okay to say, I don't know. How can I help? And just being able to listen to those stories of people, you know, I'm thinking of Cindy Hodge, who spoke today about the power of relationships. Again, Amy and Amanda, Ron, and again, so my apologies for those of you who I didn't name. But it was a gift. It was a gift to me and to our team, and I think to everybody who joined to listen from your experiences. The second thing is that I think the journey of families that we still lacking a lot, how to work with families in a way that is respectful and inclusive and truly values their experiences and their wisdom. They are the ones who know their loved ones the best. And I have parents who tell me, nobody has asked me. My kid has been in the hospital for 7 days and nobody has called. And I think that's another huge blind spot that we need to both recognize and second work towards narrowing and ideally letting it go away, whatever. And Molly, and I'm working on a short answer, but I don't know how to give you a short answer.
I think that was a perfect answer. It was perfect. And I too really appreciated this opportunity to be in community with this amazing group to learn together. And from all of the perspectives that have been shared today, I think we've had a wonderful, caring, and informative time together. Thank you, thank you, Gustavo. We agreed we would do that earlier, so thank you.
Thank you, Molly.
We really appreciate you closing out our conference today.